Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the changing patterns of monsoon in India. Now, heavy rainfall over North and Northwest India in October underscores the changing patterns of monsoon activity over the subcontinent. Monsoon rainfall has become more erratic with fewer rainy days but more intense rain. Monsoon season, which was earlier confined to the 4-month period from June to September every year, is now clearly spilling over into October. Experts point out that in line with the experience in many other parts of the world, rainfall in India is increasingly taking places in short and intense bursts. Extreme rainfall events are also increasing both in intensity and frequency. Monsoon rainfall is not just a weather phenomenon. It is a key driver of the Indian economy. A significant part of Indian agriculture still depends on monsoon rainfall for irrigation. The supply of drinking water and the generation of electricity are also linked to monsoon. So today, we'll try and understand the reasons behind the change in monsoon pattern and what needs to be done to tackle the challenges arising out of this situation. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us in the studio Urmi Goswami, senior journalist. She's joining us here. Welcome, Urmi, to the studios. We're also joined by two other ladies, Dr. Vibha Dhawan. She's Director General of TERI, and Dr. K. Sati Devi is also joining us, Scientist F and head of the NWFC, that is National Weather Forecasting Center of IMD. Welcome, both of you as well. I'll begin with you, Urmi, and let's start by trying to understand this issue at its core. And the issue here is that, is there actually a change in the pattern of the monsoon?
There is a change. Maybe it's too early to define what the pattern is, but we can see trend lines. And, the scientists on the panel will be able to explain this to you this better. But basically what we are seeing, is that the monsoon is spilling over. If you remember last year as well, October was extremely wet. And, 100-year-old records were broken in one single day. That is how much rainfall fell. I'm talking just in Delhi. I'm not even going to the rest of the country.
Even this year, since you're talking about Delhi and records, this October is the wettest since 1956.
Exactly. So therefore, so the monsoon has spilled over. Then we have been observing in the past few years, which is something you mentioned, that not only has the monsoon season become longer, but also that there are days of intense rainfall, then dry, and then again intense rainfall. So basically, you can say that you will see that the overall, though we are in excess this year, but you can say overall in a month you are not deficit, let's say. But when you start looking at the disaggregate data, you'll realize that all of the rainfall is concentrated in few days, which is not exactly where we want. Now, is this a trend? I think that perhaps more data is required, or let's say if there is more data, that needs to be studied better. Okay. But we can see trend lines, so to speak. We are seeing this happen over the past few years.
Okay.
So yes, there is a change happening. Now, if that becomes a pattern or a new pattern emerges, because clearly the two things that we have noticed have been going through, but following through. But what else is changing? Because there are many variables, right? The weather systems that change, so currents. This year you have the monsoon is trying to retreat, but there's the air current pressure is pushing it back. So you're having all these things happen. Now, are those happening every year, or are there different factors at play? Okay. So yes, long and short is things are changing.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. Let's bring in the experts here on this, and let me put this to you, Dr. Sati Devi. The question is same. Is there a change in the pattern of monsoons, but also understanding the fact, as Urmi was pointing out, that this is not the first year where we have seen this kind of change, monsoon withdrawal spilling over towards October, or, cases of intense bursts of rainfall over a short period of time. So what does it indicate? A complete change in the pattern we are looking at, or is this just a trend which we are trying to understand?
No, actually, if you are talking about last 2 years or so, monsoon withdrawal from the entire country, that has occurred in the last week of October only. And regarding the change in pattern, We were earlier, if we were looking into the normal date of onset as well as withdrawal and all, monsoon onset over the country is considered as per its onset over Kerala. So after seeing some changes in the pattern, actually we have done the studies and accordingly we have made the new normals and it was published very recently. So accordingly what we are seeing is if you are talking about the onset of monsoon over Kerala, there is not much change. It is almost happening around first June itself. However, if you are talking about the coverage for the entire country, earlier it was normal date was 15th July, but as per the new normals, it is around 8th July. So it is coverage is by about 1 week earlier. This is
Okay.
what that. And once you are talking about the withdrawal starts from the northwestern part of the country. So northwest, it was as per the earlier normal, this withdrawal was to commence from 1st September. That was the earlier normal. But as per the new normal, it is around 17th September. This is a new now. So almost there is a delay from Northwest India itself by about 2 weeks. So this is what we have found from our study. So
Okay.
it has changed accordingly. We have already made a new normal. So this
Okay,
is what
okay.
I want to tell
But
about the.
Dr. Sati Devi, what is the rationale behind this? What is the reason behind this? Can we attribute this to the climate change? Because these kind of changes are seen at other places in the world as well. Various other countries are also facing the similar phenomena in terms of short, intense bursts of rainfall or rainfall-induced disasters as well.
Yeah, if you look into the pattern, intensity of rainfall also, one thing what we can see now is the intensity of rainfall. Within a short period, you are getting a lot of very intense rainfall activities are happening, and that is it will create a lot of disaster, like flash flood, urban flooding, landslides, all these things. It is happening. Cloud burst, we are telling, no, it is happening. So it has something to do with the changes in the global warming and all this we are telling. We can exactly, I cannot totally tell only because of that, because even land use, so many things are influencing the change in pattern. However, this global warming changing, that is also one of the factor which is influencing these changes.
Okay, okay. Dr. Vibha, your views there on the changing pattern and the rationale or the reasons behind it. Do you also believe that it's because of the overall, climate change situation, or there are local atmospheric factors also at play here?
Well, really speaking, to me, it's combination of both. In the rains in Delhi, of course, we are talking of western disturbance, low pressure systems, and so on, that has caused it. But it goes without saying that climate change has a very important role to play. It is well documented. In Delhi, temperatures, they have touched close to 50 degrees, and heat waves, they were for a much longer spell than what we have experienced in the past. Now, hot season essentially means that the air is also hot. And we all know that hot air holds more water, and more water, essentially more moisture, water. And it holds for a long time, but it stays there longer. And therefore, there are long spells of dry spells are comparatively longer. And the reason that when it rains, then it pours, then there is heavy rain, because the entire moisture which is trapped there in the air, that gets released, and therefore you have heavy rain. So what we say that climate change, and it was well predicted, that it is not just the overall rain, it is not just the overall drought. We are talking of extremes of temperature. We are talking of extremes of rains on a particular day. So that is what was predicted, and that is now have started happening.
Okay.
And as I explained to you, it is because your air is holding more water, and how long will it hold it? So one day when it pours, it's a heavy downpour.
Urmi, as you're pointing out earlier, it looks like, as the experts are also saying, it looks like a combination of both factors here. But more at play is the issue of climate change, and then something which if we take a look at the international scenario also, at other geographical areas beyond our boundaries, beyond the boundaries of subcontinent, Indian subcontinent as well, it is pretty much clear, bouts of rain, spells of drought as well, longer ones, unexpected ones as well in areas where there was never expected that there will be drought. Those areas world over are facing drought situations and flash floods due to rains as well. So is this something which the scientists and the experts have been warning about and we're facing it now?
Yes. Unfortunately, the bad news is that we can't plead ignorance. Scientists have been warning us, and they have been warning us pretty much for the last 2 and more decades. And it's just that as time passed, scientists got surer and more certain about the causal links. Today, the IPCC brought out its the 6th sort of assessment report. In that, you actually had space for weather attribution. So attributing how much of weather change can you attribute to climate change. So they actually are looking at attribution. So science has gotten more and more certain. But to say that we were not warned would be incorrect. And the fact is that, the climate change, what is it? We are spewing greenhouse gases, which is kind of creating an envelope and trapping, hot air. So like a greenhouse effect, right? And that heating up actually impacts the earth and all its constituents in different ways. So it's not just a straight line. As Dr. Dhawan mentioned, that every degree of temperature rises, 7%, there's an increase of moisture retention in the atmosphere by 7%. Just imagine 7% more rain. That's actually
that's
the
a huge quantity.
Yeah, and that's actually how much the October rains this year. That's excess. 7%. That's the exact figure of how much excess we have. So imagine that. But it's also changing the way air currents happen. So you have the jet stream phenomena, which actually regulates the movement of air, cold air from the poles, from the Arctic, towards and regulates most of the temperature in the northern hemisphere. Now, if that jet stream slows down, what basically happens is the days of hotter or wetter or colder temperature increase because the jet streams, pausing. Or you have, but at the same time, what's also happening, and we forget this very often, is oceans are warming, right? So that basically means that there is no cooling happening. The Earth's not cooling down. So if something is hot, you're heating it further. Now just think about it in very simple layman terms, that if you have you're boiling a pot of water and you haven't cooled it down and you're boiling it again, the amount of time it takes to sort of spill over is much shorter. So we are in that kind of a situation, and we have been warned about it.
Okay.
And if you ask me next, what is it that we can do? I mean, there's a lot we can do, but I think
we'll come to that part as well.
Okay.
But we're still into the middle of trying to understand what's happening and how it is happening as well. I'd like to bring you here again, Dr. Sati, and since you're the head of the National Weather Forecasting Center. The IMD has done a good job in the past few years in terms of predicting monsoon onset as well as withdrawal, rainfall and other weather phenomena as well. But does this change in the pattern make things a bit difficult when we're talking about the forecast scenario here? Because it's just not a weather phenomena. There's a monsoon in India has a lot of impact on our daily lives.
See, in order to give prediction is we have a seamless forecasting strategy. So we have long range forecast also, medium range. Long range is for a season as a whole. Then we are having monthly forecast. Then we are having medium range and short range forecast. And to address this very intense activity, we are having nowcast also, especially the things which is happening in a short period. We have this seamless strategy, so we are able to manage it. Especially the things which is happening, very intense activity and all, we are giving it in the nowcast state. So at least every 6 hours, or in case of very much intense condition continuously changing, we are giving every 3 hours, or required hourly also. We are giving this, and we are increasing our monitoring. Everything is. We have done a lot of modernization. That is why our this forecast capability has improved. And this rainfall, and also what I am telling, what I talked about climate change, whatever happening, what happened exactly now in Delhi and all, it is not something long-term feature. It is something happening with respect to the synoptic situation. There are certain synoptic scenario. There are certain weather system which is causing rain.
Okay.
So short range we can address this system, and long range it has to be taken differently.
Okay.
But each and every events we are able to capture because of this seamless strategy. We are able to capture the things.
Okay.
That's what I want to tell about our forecasting strategy.
Okay. Okay. So at least we'll be forewarned, pretty much in advance as far as the situations are concerned. That is something which we can be rest assured about as far as the forecast scenario is concerned, as Dr. Sati is pointing out. Dr. Vibha, coming to this aspect, as I was pointing out earlier, that monsoon in India is not just a weather phenomena. Of course, elsewhere as well, it has a lot of impact. But when we are looking at our country, agriculture sector, and then the power generation sector as well, drinking water also is one aspect which needs to be taken closer look at. So in terms of, sorry, the effect of changing pattern of monsoon, how do you assess that?
You are absolutely right, and not just for India, for any country. When we talk of agriculture is that when you sow seeds, they depend. We have varieties, short day varieties, long day varieties. So they are dependent on temperature, day length, and so on. So if you go for late sowing of wheat because of late monsoon this year, you cannot use the same variety. What has happened in the past, and you rightly mentioned, the sowing date for paddy, there are government regulations that you can't sow paddy before a certain date, and that was largely looking at or matching with the monsoon pattern. So if monsoon is delayed, your entire cropping pattern gets impacted. And as I said, that you are dealing with life, the seed, when it germinates, the plant, when it grows, it requires certain temperatures, it requires certain day length. So if we don't have the proper varieties, our yields are going to get impacted in spite of adequate moisture in the soil. So the entire research is then to be towards choosing the varieties or developing varieties that can be sown late, in terms, say, if you say wheat. But then wheat is not the only crop. After the wheat is harvested, we go for paddy. And what has happened in the past when you talk of burning of parali, again, that has happened. Of course, there are many reasons, but one of the main reason is that when you harvest paddy and the time between harvesting of paddy and sowing of wheat is so little that farmer has very few options than to burn the crop residue in the field. So with rain, it is further going to impact your cropping patterns. The varieties which are prevalent today, they may not be the best ones when you are going for late sowing of those varieties.
Okay.
So therefore, our research has to be different. It is going to impact us. It has already started impacting us. If you see the prices of vegetables in the market today, they are skyrocketing, and we are going to further feel the pinch because many of the fields, they got embedded in water for last so many days, and maybe the entire seedlings that the farmer had sown, they are gone. And those varieties, and if they do the re-sowing, they may not give you the crop or the yields that you have expected.
Okay.
So it is going to have long-term impact on our daily lives as well.
Okay. Okay. Urmi, that brings me to that point which you're earlier making, but this is a twofold question. One is mitigating the challenges which arise out of the changing pattern of monsoon. The other is ensuring that it doesn't, spill over further. It doesn't the situation doesn't become worse. So how do you handle two aspects? One, Dr. Vibha has pointed out, we'll have to look at, a change in our strategy with research and crop patterns as well. That aspect, and what more can be done there. And of course, the other part.
So you've hit bullseye. One of the things is that the changes that we're experiencing now, they're here to stay. Because this is what we are facing. however, even whatever percentage of the current phenomena is attributable to climate change is the product of emissions that have happened over a period of time. So there is no running away from this. So hence a question of research. One of the things that needs to be done is to actually study this pattern much better, to actually see the pattern emerge. Recently, the head of IMD gave an interview where he said that one of the issues is about doing better forecasts, better projections, better understanding comes from having better data. Now, the data available to IMD, of course, there's been a quantum improvement, but clearly we need more and more data that can be sifted through, and patterns and micro patterns can be found. After all, this country is not just Delhi. We have to look at the entire country.
In fact.
Right? So that. The other thing that needs in how do we deal with what's already happening? We must remember one thing. One issue is that your monsoon's gotten longer. If that was a predictable thing, then you would have a certain way of dealing with it. But what we are seeing is that in a month, it's not the same period, same dates or around the same time that the rainfall is like crazy amount of rainfalls, and then there is basically no rain. What happens to the farmer who has, it's not just wheat and paddy, he could be growing vegetables, he could be growing fruits. What happens to them? So then there has to be some thinking. So therefore, there has to be a greater service connection between, say, the IMD, the agriculture extension services, creating community centers where information flows more seamlessly. So there has to be much more work that has to be done. This is just agriculture I'm talking about. You take roads. Roads get impacted by, bad rains, right? Like huge amounts of rain, not just flooding. I mean, after the water has receded, you see potholes. We need to build roads that are actually resilient to this kind of rain. We have to start changing virtually every facet of our life to cope with, or to use the term adapt, the term scientists would use, adapt to the changed situation, the changed climate, the new normal. And then is the question of how do we avoid a further slide? And avoiding a further slide comes from actually mitigating against more emissions. That means we have to learn how to emit less. That will also require us to change our life, the way we do things, which could be you use energy more efficiently. You minimize, the amount of fuel that we spend just getting into a car. Every person gets into one car. I mean, one car, one person, too much fuel spent, congestion happens, and we are actually emitting more. So we have to change all of that. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Indeed, there is a lot of work, and it has to be a multi-pronged approach, as you're pointing out. Thank you so much, Urmi, Dr. Sati Devi, and Dr. Vipha Dhawan as well for sharing your views and insight as our experts and panelists were pointing out. Clearly, this is a change in the monsoon pattern which we are witnessing, and of course, there are local factors, but largely the climate change situation is also to blame for it, and eventually all of us on planet Earth to blame for that situation of climate change. There are ways out of this to tackle these challenges, and of course there will have to be a multi-pronged strategy put in place to deal with the ongoing situation and also ensure that it doesn't become worse. We'll keep you updated on all what is happening on this front and various other aspects as well. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.